Are you a Toronto realtor and looking to take your business to the next level? Welcome to Toronto Realtor Resource Center. If you're a real estate professional in Toronto or surrounding area, then this podcast is for you. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, stay tuned everyone. This show will bring you all the tools, tips, and resources to help you crush it in your marketplace. Each week, I'll be bringing in Toronto's top minds, such as top-performing realtors, educators, coaches, and many other industry-related professionals in order to tap into their arsenal of resources to help you take your real estate business to the next level. I'm Leo Falkovsky, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Mortgage Loans Canada. As a top mortgage broker for over 20 years, realtors have been instrumental in my personal success, and this show is my tribute to you. We've got an awesome one today, guys. A business mentor, a sought-after expert in personal and professional development, and author of Deliver the Unexpected, Richard Robbins has 6 other new truths for business success. Robbins has also been recently named industry icon by Real Estate Professional magazine. As a busy agent, you are bombarded with emails, calls, and texts. Don't let photography and virtual tours be another headache. I personally endorse Property Pandas, a GTA-wide photography company with a killer $98 package that gives you unlimited HD photos, virtual tour, and a website for your next listing. Hard to beat that. Visit them at www.propertypandas.ca or text 647-204-3033. Open 7 days a week. The Pandas are here for you. Have you ever had a past client list their house for sale and you only find out about it when it shows up on the MLS, listed by someone else? Unfortunately, this happens far too often. As we get busy in our real estate business, we can't always find the time to stay in touch with our past clients. This is why I love ClientCaller.com. Client Caller helps busy realtors stay in touch and generate leads from their past clients. Client Caller's professional callers are local, they act as an extension of your team, and will call your database for you on a regular basis. Phoning your past clients on a regular basis is one of the best ways to generate listings. Check them out at ClientCaller.com and use word Leo in the How Did You Hear About Us to save 20%. This episode, we discussed why making an investment into your agents by coaching and training paid off big time in the long run. We also discussed the importance of working on your business and not in your business, and Richard expanded exactly what that looks like. We delved deeper into the meaning of on versus in, and the answer Richard provides is worth highlighting here, folks. Richard believes you have to have a long-term focus in order to be successful as a sales agent. We discuss the actionable steps required to move the needle towards productivity, as well as awareness signs to look out for when we get caught from being unaware that we are being non-productive. We discussed the characteristics of highly successful people. We also talked about ways to navigate out of a mental slump by following the examples Richard offered by giving examples of coaching highly productive agents. Lastly, Richard shared the 3 to 5 key traits that top performers exemplify each and every day. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, to Toronto Realtor Resource Center. We've got the one, the only real estate icon, Richard Robbins. Welcome to the show.
Well, Leo, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks so much for having me, my friend.
So excited to have you here. And this show is all about learning. It's all about growth and taking your real estate business to new heights. And Richard, we know you work with many top performing realtors, beginning realtors. But before we go ahead and dive deep in, maybe give our audience a little glimpse about your background, your journey thus far. What made you get into real estate to begin with and ultimately become the man you are today?
Well, I wish I could say it was a master plan, but I'm from Peterborough, and I used to work with my father, and I knew I wanted to do something else. So believe it or not, I was driving down George Street in Peterborough one day, and I drove by the Century 21 office, and I saw them all standing there in suits, and I saw all these really expensive cars in the parking lot, and I thought, that looks like fun. So I made an appointment with a manager, and he paid for my schooling, and that's how it all started.
Right on, right on. So walk us through those early years. Were you like an agent yourself in the beginning, and how long, and how did that go?
Yeah, I sold real estate from when I was 24 years old to when I was 27 in Peterborough, so 3 years. And then when I was 27, it was 1988, I moved up to Markham, or Unionville, where I still live today. And I opened a real estate company. It was just a small little company. And my partner and I, Dana Richard, and actually Dana today is still with me. He actually runs our whole coaching division now. He's our master's coach. He hires and trains our coaches and works with all of our coaches. We started a real estate company. The first 3 years, we got, let's just say it was challenging. And there was many times you didn't know if you're going to make it, because if you remember 1989, the market changed, right? So we opened in October of 88. I think it was February of 89. So literally months later, the market tanked, and it tanked for a long time. Interest rates were relatively high. I think they're up around 12% at that time. So it was a difficult time, but we started to figure things out. And then, so 3 years after we opened the company, we started to get heavily involved in training and coaching our agents, which we had not done well for the first 3 years. And we decided to make a full investment in the agents. And then, 3 years after that, 6 years into the business, we had the highest production per agent of any company in the trading area. And it was just because of coaching and training. And then in 1996, Dana left a few years before that. He wanted to move back home. I took the company over. And then in 1996, I sold the company to Remax, actually. They bought my company. And then I started RRI, which has now obviously been around for just over 20 years.
Right, Richard. And when you got into the game initially, is it within 3 years that you made your first hire? And what made you decide that now is the time to expand? Were you getting like overpopulated amount of leads at that time? What made you grow the team so quickly?
Well, actually, we had agents before the 3 years, but the challenge is we were out selling every day rather than coaching and training our people. So they were just sort of floundering a little bit. And that's where the whole coaching and training concept for me came from. And that's why I still do it today, because I saw the value in it. So after 3 years, I said to Dana one day, I said, the challenge is we're not investing in our people. We're trying to do it all ourselves. There was no leverage, right? It was just we're going to be as successful as the energy and we had and the amount of hours we worked. And it was actually Jim Rohn, one of my mentors. I was at a program in Dallas, and he talked a lot about coaching and training, and you got to invest in your people. And the message became really clear to me that my challenge was that I was working in the business every day instead of working on the business, which was coaching and training my people. So that's when we set up 2-hour training/coaching sessions every Tuesday morning in my office. And we shared ideas, right? We started to learn best practices. We started to hold each other accountable. We started to learn how to do listing presentations as a group. Like everybody did them, but they did them in their own way. How to work with buyers, how to have, needs analysis before you start working with a buyer, how to deal with incoming leads. We just started to develop their skills. And once we started to develop their skills, by the way, I was developing mine at the same time because I was learning from them. Then all of a sudden, everybody started to become way more productive. And that's when the company really started to grow.
Right on. And folks listening in, Richard and I haven't spoken. These aren't scripted questions and answers. We're going off the cuff the way I love it. And you mentioned something that really resonated with me, and I wonder if it resonates with others listening in. You listened to a mentor, Jim Rohn, mentor of mine as well, by the way. You have to work on the business, not in the business. Can you expand a little bit about what you mean by that for the folks that aren't familiar with that phrase?
Sure. Well, working in the business to me is you're just busy, right? You're dealing with fires all day long. You're just taking calls as they come, text, emails, on social media. You could be showing property. You could even be negotiating an offer. I consider that sort of in the business. It's just busyness. Now, a lot of those things have to be done, don't get me wrong. But on the business to me, and some people would consider that a form of business planning, which it is. But see, on the business to me is where you're generating leads. It could be a form of prospecting. It could be marketing. It could be doing lead follow-up. It could be making your listing presentation better. It could be all you're doing is you're developing basically your skills, number one, and your systems and services, number two. And what I find in real estate is that agents are really good at working in the business. Mm-hmm. You know, they live in a state of distraction and reaction too often. It takes courage to stop being busy. You know, it takes courage to say, you know, I got to slow down a little bit and I've got to work on the business, maybe work on myself, right? And Jim Rohn was a huge proponent of personal development. And I'm a little bit of a personal development junkie because I look at everybody, me as an example, I say, what I know has gotten me where I am. But the question is, what do I need to learn to get where I want to go? And that's sort of what I relate to as working on the business rather than in the business.
Right. And, you hit the nail on the head there, Richard, because that takes a lot of digging deep. A lot of us are in the nitty gritty. We're in the trenches. We're on the ground. We're in the day-to-day grind, so to speak. And so many of us stop to, it's like the swordman that's in combat. You have to stop and sharpen that sword before you go back because, if you're in combat with a dull sword, well, the result is inevitable. So having said that, I think mindset is huge. And what would you recommend to a younger, newer realtor developing that mindset and shift from working in the business to on the business?
Well, I think you've got to have a long-term focus. It's interesting. When I'm doing an event, we just finished an event in Vancouver, about 800 people, and we've got this VIP seating at the front where the people pay more to sit there, and there's tables and everything else. And I'm always, I shouldn't say shocked because I've seen this for 20 years, but when I see the people sitting in the front that have really invested more money, and let's face it, everybody's investing their time to go to a training event, but I'm really interested in how unbusy they are. Like they're sitting at the front, they're not on their phones, they're taking notes. They might be sitting on a computer taking notes, but they're not running in and out of the room. I call it unbusy. But I call it super, super productive. And then when I look towards the back of the room sometimes, not always the case, obviously, but I see people in and out of the room, and I people pick up their phone and start talking on their phone, sitting in a seminar beside other people, right? They live in a state of busyness. The challenge, I think, for us all, number one, is to understand what it is we're trying to achieve, not just this month, maybe not even this year. If you think about this, business to me is now something we should enjoy, of course, but business, you get in business because you're trying to create a lifestyle. You get into business because you're trying to create some form of freedom. And generally the two freedoms that every single person wants to create is the financial freedom and freedom of time. So when I look at that, if that is your goal, then you got to have some tangible goals around that, like, how much is that? How much you do want to work? How much do you want to be off and things like that. But if you look at the industry as a whole, and I've been in it my whole life, and I'm very thankful because I love this business, is that the two freedoms that most people get into real estate for, they actually do not have that. Mm-hmm. And that's where the busyness, because it's like you're wearing handcuffs. You want freedom, but you've got these handcuffs on. And you never stop long enough to really, get really serious about what lifestyle do I want to live? How much money do I really want to make in terms of a goal? And then re-engineer all that. So if you said to me in 5 years, I want to be making $1 million a year, well, that's great. There's your goal. At least now we got a starting point. Now we re-engineer that. And then once we re-engineer it, we say, what are the activities? Okay, they're going to produce that result. And then all day long, you have to ask yourself, is everything I'm doing today moving me towards the goals and dreams that I have? Then you're unbusy, super productive, right?
Absolutely.
rather than just trying to keep up every day with what's going on. So that's the big difference to me, the future focus, knowing what it is you want, using your business to build something that's really special that you're proud of, that gives you the freedom that you would really like to have in your life.
So, Richard, if we can move the needle towards productivity and, just stop in our day-to-day distractions, phone calls, texts, emails, there's so many multitude of ways for people to get in contact with us, and we feel productive and busy, but it's like you say, busy doesn't necessarily mean productive, and we can't elevate to new heights, new goals, if we don't stop and take the actionable steps that are actually required to help us reach that next tranche. Can you walk us through a couple of actionable steps that someone that you were describing earlier can take to propel to new levels?
Well, the first one we teach is work on your business in the morning and in your business in the afternoon. That's always been one of our fundamental teachings. And so what you do, you spend all morning trying to set appointments. If you think about it, the common denominator that all real estate agents and in your industry is the same is appointments.
Mm-hmm.
The more appointments, more qualified appointments we go on, well, obviously, the more sales we're going to do, more successful we're going to be. So imagine if you just took every morning from 9 to 12 and you say all morning long is committed to working on my business, figuring out how I can set more appointments, right? Doing your lead generation, which we all know we need to be doing on a regular basis. And then in the afternoon, if you have to allow yourself to go back into your state of busyness, that's fine, right? I believe that the way we live the morning generally is the way we're going to live the day. Mm-hmm. And in the morning, you have more energy because it requires energy to be disciplined. And in the afternoon, we just don't have as much energy, which means we don't have as much discipline. So, it's like Brian Tracy talked about, eat the frog first thing in the morning, like always do what is most difficult first thing in the morning. And what's interesting, and this is so simple because I'm sure your audience have heard all of this before. The reason is because it's a basic fundamental that works. But if you look at the characteristics of all successful people, they generally have some form of morning routine. And, I just think that having a great morning routine to get you started. So an example, when you first get up in the morning, what is it you do, right? Most people have a routine. They just don't know what the routine is, but they tend to do the same thing over and over again. So I call it powering up. Well, how do you power yourself up in the morning? Do you take 30 minutes? And maybe sit and read something positive, or go for a walk and listen to a podcast like we're recording here. But power yourself up mentally, because that creates the mindset, right?
Absolutely.
And then once you're powered up mentally, then say, okay, now I'm going to organize my day right now. I'm literally going to sit down and I'm going to look at each 30-minute block in my day and say, what am I going to do in each 30 minutes? Now, yes, some things might take longer than that. Okay, so you have a 60-minute block. And then allow yourself to be unbusy in the morning and super productive, because unbusy to me is super productive, right? Mm. And then if you have to, maybe say, okay, once I finish lunch, then I'll go out and start, reacting to what I have to deal with on a regular basis. And it's hard. And if there's anything I know with all the people we've worked with, like what I'm talking about, it's difficult to do, easy to say, difficult to do, because it requires a lot of courage to be unbusy.
No, absolutely, because I know so many of us, we wake up and the first thing we do is we turn to the phone. Let's see what shiny new emails we got, texts, Facebook messages, and right away we get into that responsive mode, and we don't do those actionable steps you were speaking about earlier, like
But
myself.
The question, Leo, why do we do that? It's an addiction. See, if you start reading about, telephones, is I think most of us are now some form addicted to our telephones. And, and I'm no different than anybody else, right? They say awareness is the first step in change. So becoming aware of it, at least, I think will help us. But when your phone vibrates, or when you wake up in the morning and you look at emails, your brain releases dopamine. It's a feel-good drug, right? Mm-hmm. So it is literally an addiction. Like, I was reading a study the other day, and it said that 80% of the time that people spend on social media is not productive time on social media. They're not posting stuff that's valuable to their audience. all they're doing is looking what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And trying to post something somebody likes or responds to their post because that releases the dopamine. So it is a true addiction, I think, that we're dealing with, and that's why it's so difficult to overcome.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Richard. And, like just being in the mortgage business, working with so many real estate agents over the years, one of the things I get is, a frustrated call in the morning from a disgruntled agent saying, I was up till midnight last night off a presentation. We lost again. This is back in the drought market, obviously, but, and they just can't shake it off. I find myself sometimes, just talking through them, just keep going and, just move on. And what tips or piece of advice can you give someone that's stuck in that, disgruntled setback and move forward?
Every single day when you wake up is a brand new opportunity.
Right.
And don't allow yesterday to control the opportunities you have for today. The challenge is, people sometimes are living in the past. And then other people live too much in the future, right? The productive people in the world, they live in the present. We have no control over what is done. None. Mm-hmm. And I know it's challenging because, I really wanted that deal. I really needed that commission check, or I really wanted those people to get that house. Now, you might look at that particular situation and learn from it. You might say, okay, what could I have done differently in that situation? Take 15 minutes, get a pad out, a journal, and say, what could I have done differently that I could have won that for my clients? Could I have, schooled them better? Could I have sent a video from my buyers saying why they want to buy this house? You know what I mean? Just look at it seriously and say, what could I have done? But then once you learn from it, because the old saying, right, you either win or you learn. Once you learn from it, say, okay, that was an experience, but I can't allow that to affect me going forward. Again, when you look at highly productive people, and I've had the good fortune of, coaching and working with some people that are like, really productive. And I talk about a mental slump. And I think that we all have mental slumps. The difference is how long they are.
Right.
When you look at the highly productive people, they have a mental slump. They have a pity party for 30 minutes, right? or 5 minutes. When you look at other people, they have a pity party for 2 weeks or a month. And it's sometimes, and I say this so respectfully to your audience, but it's sometimes a little bit of an excuse too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because we're letting ourselves off the hook a little bit. And we all know that we can't produce excuses and results at the same time. But, it's whatever you have to do to get back on the horse. I don't care whether you got to read a book, listen to a podcast, mentally get yourself back in the game, review your goals, remind yourself why you're doing it every day, and just get up, get back on the horse and get into the game. Because as we all know, you don't drown falling in the water, you just drown staying there.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love your phrase, you either win or you learn. And I hope you guys, folks, that's worth taking note. And speaking of challenges, Richard, what greatest challenges have you had thus far? Take us to a time where you've experienced adversity or setback. How did you navigate through that adversity, and what greatest lesson have you learned? Take us there and let our audience know what you would like to get from that story.
We grew the company when I first started 20 years ago. We grew the company really quickly. And, we went from like 0 to 90 employees in probably 6 years.
Phenomenal.
And then all of a sudden, 2008 hit, you know what I mean? The U.S. market went bad. I had an office down in the U.S. And all of a sudden I was behind the 8 ball. I was trying to keep up. Every month I'm trying to make payroll. Like that's what ended up happening. And I had a big machine moving, right? And all of a sudden I realized that I've got to get this thing, back down to a size where, we have a profitable organization. Because I always say that if you're not profitable, you're almost broke, period. Right. So, and from a business standpoint, not a personal standpoint, I've had difficulties personally too, as everybody has, but as a business standpoint, that was the toughest time for me when you start to, I had to fly down to San Diego and let everybody know that, we're going to close down that office. And I remember the flight all the way to San Diego it was so difficult for me, right? Because I loved those people, but I just knew what I had to do. And it took us about, 18 months to sort of restructure everything and get back into, good shape again. And I just remember every day that I'd wake up and I didn't have anything fun to deal with. You know what I mean? It seemed like, Leo, every day I'm waking up and I'm thinking, okay, I got to deal with all of these issues today. And none of them are really exciting. I'm not growing right now, right? And I say it's more fun going up the ladder than it is going down. And we got it back to a point that, obviously we're still here and we're thriving and we're doing well again. But what it did, it made me realize that when you build any organization, is that I was built on a foundation of sand. That was my problem. I grew too fast. I didn't have, a lot of, say, the right people in place, a lot of the systems in place. And as long as things were going well, I was fine. But the minute it got a little challenging, it just crumbled. So what I learned from a business is that what I need to do is make sure that, you don't grow too fast, and that you have all of the systems and structures in place underneath you so that, you can weather the storm. It's like, when a hurricane comes through, you've got to have a pretty strong foundation, right?
Yes, no doubt, no doubt. And when you say don't grow too fast, you're probably aware that the new system out there is teams and expansion. And, you have brand new agents coming out of ARIA these days. And the first thing they think about is, how do I either join a team or form a team? What would you say to that kind of mentality? Would you agree that they first join a team? Do they struggle and learn from their own experiences at first? Or how would they handle that situation fresh out of the gates?
The challenge is fresh out of the gates, they're undertrained. So when somebody gets a real estate license, they haven't learned anything about a listing presentation, how to work with buyers, financial management, time management, lead generation, lead conversion, how to set and achieve goals, business plan. They just haven't learned any of that. And they got a real estate license. And they go, okay, wow, here we go. The thing is the great real estate teams and the great agents, they're business people. They're an entrepreneur. They operate like a business. And that's not the way that most agents, when they come out of the gate are operating. So I would say a couple of things. I would say, number one, I think there's a great benefit to working on a good team for an agent. I really do. I think because then they're going to go in, they're going to get trained. Or the other option is you get involved in a company like ours, or there's many other companies out there that do the same thing that will coach you through exactly what it is you need to do. They have all the listing presentation templates and buyers. They've got all that content developed. They will help you develop a business plan. So if you're going to do it on your own, well, you better get some help. And maybe you've got a great broker that will help you with that. There's some great brokers who do a good job of that as well. But don't think when you get your real estate license, you're ready. You're not ready. You know what I mean? Like all you have got is a real estate license.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more.
So that would be my recommendation is when you get out, make sure that you have solid help, whether it's from a team, from your broker, from a company like ours, or somebody in the industry that can help you.
Yeah, no, Richard, you hit the nail on the head because far too few companies actually have, I would say there's a huge gap between when you get out of school and hit the ground running, listing presentation, handling objections, buyer presentation, multiple offer situations, just dealing with the nitty-gritty grind, so to speak, and huge gap between what you learn from ARIA and, a world-class coaching company such as yours. So, you offer an amazing service to the folks, and we're going to get into, towards the end, how folks can reach out and get in contact. But before that, I know you work with many top performing agents all across not only Canada, but south of the border as well, probably other countries. What 3 to 5 key examples can you think of that top performing agents have in common?
Well, number one, every day they're somehow, some way generating leads. That's the deal breaker for everybody.
Right.
If you look at all of the top agents, they have some form of lead generating system that is bringing them in leads every single day. Now, let's face it, down in the US, some might be using Zillow and they're buying the leads. Others have what one of our teachings called the lifetime referral system. They've got a massive database of people they're serving on a regular basis. There's many ways to generate leads. There's actually 19 different ways of generating leads. So what they've done is they've picked 3 to 5 And you don't need to do all 19, but you need to pick 3 to 5. And those 3 to 5, you got to master them. So in other words, I've got one agent as an example that we've worked with for years that he is doing one sale per 2.4 open houses. These open houses aren't just regular open houses. They're like events, right? But because he gets so many people through his open houses, and because he's got more than just him there to work with the people that come through, and he's got a whole system in place, he has mastered that lead generating system. Mm-hmm. Now, at one time, he was like 1 deal per 6 open houses, but now he's down to 2.4. So that's called mastery to me. Mastery to me is, where you can take a lead generating strategy and master where you track your numbers, because when you track your past, you can better predict your future. So he knows every 2.5 open house, he's going to do a deal. We've got somebody else that we got 300 people in his database. And it's one of the systems that we teach. And he does roughly 60, it's just over 20%. So if he's got 300 people in his database, he's doing a minimum of 60 deals per year right from that database. Because that's 20% of the 300 somehow, somewhere turning into deals. And that's a whole system that we've developed. Well, he's mastered that particular system. Okay. Then I've got somebody else, another client down in the US, same thing. He does a lot of work with HomeLight and Zillow and these other companies. Well, he has an inside salesperson that is converting all of those leads, and he's converting a higher percentage than the average. The average online lead is between 2 and 4% in terms of conversion, and he's got his conversion up around 12%. So pick 3 or 5 lead generating strategies. When you're brand new, start with 1, then go to 2, then go to 3. And I find most people get up to about 5. And these are multi-million-dollar producers. So that would be the first thing. You've got to figure that out. You've got to have leads coming in on a regular basis. The second is you've got to work with qualified leads. So, we call it the when, where, why. So in other words, they got to have a when, they got to have a where. When are you moving? Where are you moving? And if they have no where and they have no when, they need to have a why. Why are you moving? Well, we're getting divorced. They might not know where and when, but they have a why. Mm-hmm. But if they have no when, they have no where, they have no why, you need to say goodbye. Because you can't spend time with unqualified people all day. Absolutely. And be productive. Doctors only see sick people, right? You know what I mean? Like that's part of being a business person. So the second is your ability to quickly qualify the leads, whether you're at a party, whether you're at an open house, when somebody asks you about real estate, you got to be able to qualify that lead in a matter of minutes to determine whether it's a lead or maybe it's just a friendly conversation with somebody. So I would say, lead qualification is a second. And of course, the third to me, like every great agent is great lead follow-up. They're not waiting for leads to phone them. They have a follow-up system that is automated, by the way. And when I say follow-up system, I mean, what they're doing is they're sending valuable information. So I just had an experience. I just recently bought a place down in Florida, and I had an agent down there. And I didn't know this agent. I met him actually at an open house at a friend's house that was for sale. And we happened to be there. He shows up for the open house. We get talking. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I looked at some houses. I put an offer in one, and I said, I'm in no rush. I don't need it till the fall. And I waited. But you want to know something? Every single week, this guy sent me something of value. I was amazed, right? He'd say, hey, just want you to know, what's going on in the market down here. This new listing just came up. And I know it's not what you're looking for, but I decided to send it to you so at least you have an idea as to what's happening with prices. And then, the next thing, he'd send me something in that particular community, just so you know what goes on in this community. There's this annual party they do. And I just thought you'd be interested because you might someday live in here. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's good. He's not bugging me, right? He's sending me valuable information where I felt compelled to continue to work with him. And I have since bought it, and I bought it off of him. And it was his effective lead follow-up to stay in touch with me, but not bug me, bring me value, keep me up to date what's going on. So I'd say there's your 3 top, there's no question. You got to master those 3. And then after that, it's all what you do with your time every day.
To summarize, Richard, lead gen, qualifying the lead, the when, why, and how. And the third is follow-up. But if we can circle back to number 2, specifically the why, so many sellers, for example, could be kicking tires, just testing the waters. They'll list their house for sale just because the neighbor sold for, $2 million in a drought market. They didn't really buy, but you know what, the last one sold for $2 million. Let's see if we can get 2.1 or 2.2. And those hungry agents that are catering to that client, I think they're just spinning wheels. Would you agree?
100%. So think about how much it costs them in time and money to list a home that's not going to sell, or how much time and money it costs them to work with a buyer that will probably not buy. And what's interesting about our industry, Leo, is that everybody wants to talk about real estate. Everybody's interested in homes. People love looking at homes. Like I always say, it would be easier in the insurance business because at least only people that are serious in insurance will talk to you about it.
Oh, gosh.
But everybody talks about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you're at a party and somebody walks up and they find out you're real estate. And as soon as they find out you're real estate, right, they start asking you questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, a house just sold down the street for me. I'm really curious, how much did that sell for? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. But now you have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just say, well, geez, I'll find out for you. You want me to send you the information or whatever? But, I'm curious, where are you thinking of moving to? Oh, we're not. You know what I mean? Oh, we're not. Oh, I see. So you're actually not moving. You're curious. Really? Well, I'm curious, how long have you lived there? And just you have some questions, which, by the way, you can go to our website and download all this stuff for free. All those scripts are there. But you're prepared, if somebody starts talking real estate, to ask them a couple non-threatening questions that will help you determine whether this person's a lead, because they might be a lead. The same thing, you think about, somebody wants to sell it. Well, let me ask, why are you moving? Oh, the one just sold next door for 2, and if we can get 2.4, we'll sell. Well, so would everybody else in your neighborhood, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to have a motivation. It's like everything is based on motivation, right? I always say there's 2 things that'll sell a house. One is the right price, and the second is strong motivation. Because if you're priced wrong, but they're really motivated to sell, they'll eventually price right.
Right. And this is the disconnect I get sometimes from, newer, hungry agents. They get the notion that somebody is interested in selling. Yes, they'll sell, but for that right price, 200,000 or 400,000 over the asking of that last house, but there is no real motivation because they haven't bought it yet. So, a piece of advice to that younger, newer realtor is, if I'm hearing you correctly, Richard, just take a step back and analyze the situation and delve deeper into that why, because I think that's key.
No question. But then the bigger question is, why would a newer agent spend time with an unmotivated prospect?
Absolutely.
Because it makes them feel busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, I got to go find another lead.
Yeah.
So again, unbusy.
Unbusy, and it's easy to do.
Right. It's just, it's easy. Let's go look at homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you've got to make sure that the people are qualified to be buying homes if you're going to take them out and spend time with them.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we can circle back to actual lead gen, so, if you're blessed and you have a database of 300 people to start with and their circles of influence, that's great. But if you don't, what websites or companies would you recommend newer agents seek out for actual lead follow-up, like social media sites or, Google these days isn't as easy as it used to be. There's a lot of Facebook advertisements. What's your take on social media, Google, or lead gen?
Well, I like social media a lot used properly. However, I always get concerned when people want to start to rely on that as your lead gen source, right? Because think about this. When you're new to the business, you've got 2 groups of people you can go to. You can go to the people you know, and you can go to the people you don't know. Well, we always start with the people we know. So we won't, that's where you're going to start. But if you're going to go to the people you don't know, then you say, well, there's really only 2 ways of doing it. One is you pay to play, right? And social media has just become a pay to play game. That's all it is now. They have this massive following. They got millions of eyeballs. So now it's just the old way of advertising in the newspaper to a degree, right? Now, it can be targeted, which is a thing of beauty, no question. But what I say to new agents is the first thing you've got to do is you've got to develop your skills to go out and meet people. You've got to learn how to, whether it's, go out and knock on some doors, get involved in your community and go meet people, whether you join clubs, whether it's your church or whether it's the schools or things in your community. But boots on the ground, when you first start, just get out into the world and meet people. Tell them what you're doing and set a goal that I'm going to meet X number of new people every single day, because that is inexpensive. And that develops skill. So you imagine now somebody says, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of money in advertising, and they're newer to the business. All of a sudden, they start getting some leads coming in, but they got no skill to convert them. They just wasted their money.
Mm-hmm.
There's been no skill development. And it takes skill to convert online leads, like tremendous amounts of skill.
No doubt. It's like getting into a ring, 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. You can be conditionally fit and you're great with the bag, but you haven't had the proper coaching. You haven't had the proper time with the trainer, and real estate is no different.
And social media will just eat up people's time as well. So I think with social media, you got to be highly disciplined. Say, okay, I'm going to spend X number of minutes a day, on it. And I think Facebook is the best play right now, with targeted marketing, because they got such a huge reach. I think Instagram, is becoming a much larger play and doing really well. But the secret to social media is you've got to go where your audience is. Mm-hmm. So an example, if you've got a younger audience, if I was selling, first-time buyers condos downtown Toronto, I'm probably not going to go to Facebook. I'm probably going to go to Instagram because it has a younger audience. Right. Snapchat, right? Because it has a younger audience. If I'm selling to baby boomers, I'm probably going to move towards the Facebook model because Facebook is out of vogue for young people, right?
No, agreed. My 11-year-old, he told me Facebook is only good for older people like you, Dad. So
right.
You got to get on Instagram, and for the life of me, I can't figure it out. So
so you got to go where your audience is.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. You have to go where the audience is, 100%. Yeah. And we talked about newer, younger realtors, but I remember coming to a coaching event of yours some 15 or so years ago, and there was a top producing agent. I don't remember the chap's name, but he asked you a question. He says, you know what, my production currently is about 500,000 GCI, gross commission income. Not sure if you remember this. So, it's a while ago. I don't know if I'm coachable, Richard. What would you say to that? And I remember your reply. What you said, if I recall correctly, was, yes, everybody is coachable, but it just may take a little bit longer. Do you remember that?
The whole thing about coachability is like some people are more coachable than others, and everybody has to be coached differently because we're not all the same personality, right? So once we understand, we do personality profiling and all these sort of things. Once we understand the personality, we get a pretty good idea. But I say when somebody becomes coachable is when they have a strong why. There's something they really, really want. And they've made a decision they're going to take it to the next level. So here's an example. We have real estate brokers will call our company and they'll say, hey, I got a guy in my office. I want you to coach him and we're going to pay. And we say, no, we can't do that. Because if that person doesn't have skin in the game, they're not coachable.
Sure.
Right? They're going to go, oh, yeah, whatever. I get on these calls. But they got to be writing the check. So once you're willing, think about this, Leo. It's like a trainer. It's like if you hire a trainer, you've now made an investment in that trainer. You're going to be a lot more coachable with that trainer, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Whereas if you gave me certificates for a trainer, and I've never worked with a trainer before.
Right.
You see the difference?
Absolutely.
I might go to the trainer, but I'm probably not going to be as coachable or as engaged. I might be, but chances are I won't be. So coachability to me is when somebody has decided, like with a trainer, because a trainer is nothing more than a coach, that, okay, I've been 20 pounds overweight or 50 or whatever the number is for a long time, and I've drawn a line in the sand. It's time to change. That's the minute somebody becomes coachable, because now they're going to make an investment in themselves to figure it out. So what I find is when somebody really, so that guy that's doing 500, he might say, well, I've been stuck at 500 for 5 years. Well, I've finally made a decision. That I'm no longer satisfied. I'm going to 750. But if he looks at it and says, well, I've been at 500 for a long time. I'd like to go to 750. But, at the end of the day, if I still did 5, I'm okay. Well, he's not a typical client for us. You see, because, he'd like to go to 750. But he's not coachable because there's no burning desire, right?
Sure.
There's not a strong why as to why you want to get there.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And before we wrap up, you're a busy guy. I know you need to get going. What's your take on the Toronto real estate market these days? Do you see a correction further, or do you believe that, there's a pent-up demand? Canadians legitimately need homes to purchase and occupy and are just waiting for, to see which way we're going to go, up or down by the fall. What's your take on that?
Well, I think right now we're dealing with a psychological effect, right, of the Ontario government 16-point plan. And obviously recently we had a quarter-point interest rate bump, right? So there's some uncertainty right now. So, of course, when there's uncertainty, we see our inventory start to rise. We see our sales start to go down because everybody just gets nervous. And when there's uncertainty breeds fear. When people start to fear any form of fear, they stop. They just stop.
Right.
So what I think we're going to see over the summer, I do believe that months of inventory is going to continue to rise. Right now, as of the end of June, we're at 2.5 months of inventory in the GTA. Now, that can be different depending on property type or geographic layer, but if you look at the whole GTA, we're at 2.5 months. A balanced market is 5 to 6 months of inventory. Like, pricing's simple. Everything is based on supply and demand. For many years in Toronto, we were dealing with 1 month of inventory. 0.8, 1, 1.2. Of course, we got multiple offers and everything. So I think what you're going to see is the months of inventory rise, July and August. And then September and October and November, that'll be your telltale months. So if we start to see a little bit of a recovery in September, October, I think we're going to be okay. If inventory continues to rise, I think it could be challenging for a little while. My opinion is that everything will balance back out. I personally hope we stay at 2 to 3 months of inventory, maybe even 4, because you can't have prices going up at the pace they've been going up for the last few years. It's ultimately unhealthy. Sure. Right? You go back and you look at 1985 to 1989 when the market crashed, and prices went up by just over 25% every year. What happened in 1989? Boom. Right?
Yeah.
So I want to see a healthy market. I want to see growth of 5% a year, 10% a year, right? Because we have a huge influx of people. And if you look at everything in Canada, unemployment is generally going down. We're employing more people generally every month. The economy is generally doing well. Our inflation is well under control. And even with the interest rate bump, and I know we're going to see more of those in the future, I'm sure, it's still cheap, unbelievably cheap. It's been like this for 7 years.
Sure.
We have all of the factors that should cause us to have a very healthy market in the fall and into 2018. That's my opinion, and that's what I think we'll see. And I personally don't want to go back to 1 month of inventory because I don't think that's healthy long term.
Richard, I think your prediction is bang on. And for the realtors listening in who are frustrated, disgruntled, not knowing which way things are going to go, I would recommend, and I'm sure you would attest, just stick it out and go with a ride, because things will level off. And as soon as the confusion is over, we're going to be back in biz.
Agreed wholeheartedly.
Super. And just final question before we wrap up. What's one thing the world does not know about you, Richard, that they cannot look up on social media or Google?
That's a really good question. Okay, here
we're going off the cuff here, guys. So
yeah. This is the first thing that comes to me. I had a disease when I was 8 years old called encephalitis, and I came very, very close to dying. I was in a coma for weeks, and it actually affected my, it's a neurological disease, right? And it's a virus. It's basically a neurological virus. And so a lot of people, I read a lot of books, so they think I can retain a lot of information. I can't. So I can retain concepts, but I can't retain details.
Sure.
And that's because of this particular disease, right? So I'm a big picture thinker. I'm a terrible detail guy. And thank God I have my wife in here that basically runs the whole organization. She's my partner, and she can manage of all the details. So I'm a concept guy, but I totally have trouble remembering details, right?
Wow.
Names. But I don't think I've ever said publicly about that disease, but I would say that's something that nobody could look up, and was a very trying 2 years of my life.
Wow, Richard, that's quite the challenge. That's quite the adversity to overcome, and good for you. You're a great mentor to many, many industry colleagues. I want to thank you so much for being generous with your time today, for hanging with us, for all the golden nuggets you shared with us. Just final question. What's one thing I could have asked you that I didn't? And if I did, there would be a takeaway or a golden nugget there.
Well, it comes back to Jim Rohn. The message I got from Jim was money is an exchange of value. Really simple message, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that means to me, and that when he said that on that stage, it changed my life when he explained it. So in other words, for the people that make the most amount of money, they provide the most amount of value to the marketplace because the marketplace will pay for value. So as human beings, as business people, and you're doing this right here. Okay, so, Leo, by you doing this podcast, you're trying to bring value to real estate agents, and you're in the mortgage business.
Mm-hmm.
That is an example right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that all of us, I think it was Martin Luther King said, anyone can be great because anyone can serve. Choose your audience. That would be buyers and sellers for real estate agents. Hopefully you'll have a geographical area or a certain type of person you're working with. And then get creative in how you can serve them in other ways, okay, that most people are not doing, because that's how you stand out.
Love it.
And that's what you're doing here with this podcast, so I commend you for that.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much, Richard. Once again, where can our audience find you to learn more about yourself, your company, and get more info?
Yeah, you can just go to richardrobbins.com, and our website is there, or, Richard L. Robbins on most of the social media sites, and you'll find us.
Beautiful. And I'm going to link that up into the show notes for everyone listening in so they can find you easily. Thanks again for hanging with us, Richard. Much continued success to you and Richard Robbins International. Thanks again for being generous with your time today.
Thank you, Leo.
All the best. There you have it, guys. I've gotten so many takeaways from this episode that I actually cramped my wrist taking them down. Some noteworthy ones I've summarized are: productive people live in the present and not in the past. We have no control over the past, but we do have an opportunity to reflect on that experience and learn from it and keep moving forward. Grab a notepad and take 15 minutes to learn from that experience that may be setting us back. Don't let yesterday dictate tomorrow's opportunities. You either win or you learn. I love that one. Check out the complete show notes to this episode by visiting leofalkovsky.com. That's leofalkovsky.com. And be sure to check out our complete mortgage sections offering the best mortgage rates and programs our industry has to offer. Never lose a real estate transaction over financing ever again. Be sure to check out our complete mortgage section for all the details. Tune in next time. We have another killer episode lined up, and keep your thirst for learning, because learners are earners. Stay great, everyone.